good and great people of the interwebs. This is your host, KO, Kevin Orosz, coming to you live in studio in Austin, Texas. One of the best places in the world to be right now if you're in the know. And you're in the know because you're watching this show. So this tentatively will be the polarity episode. We're going to just batch it all together. I've been kind of riffing and ranting on this show in the first episodes, doing solo casts and kind of taking y'all through some of my most interesting topics that I'm thinking of now and currently. It is April 2026 at time of recording. And most of the episodes so far, I'm just kind of explaining my process. This is meant to be a little more raw, unfiltered, uncensored, ungovernable, unemployable. Very few fucks have been given, and I'm going to continue that thread. Now, most of the stuff I've been talking about has been technology and like philosophy, because that's just what I'm geeking out on right now. A lot of stuff about AI, a lot of stuff about robotics, a lot of stuff about futurism and philosophy and psychology of how humans are basically transforming in this age and this era right now. Now, a lot of my work, which many of you will probably have seen online, has had to do with relationships, intimacy, love, dating, sexuality, polarity, masculine, feminine dynamics, mating, evolutionary psychology, things I've been very, very interested in for a long time. So this is a big part of my coaching practice and what I support clients with. I've worked with people from all stripes and colors, from totally single young men and women all the way up until, couples that have been married for 20 years and everything in between. And I've learned a lot in that process. I've also learned a lot in my own process. I was doing the math recently, and basically I've been an entrepreneur in terms I count it. I start the clock when I basically started writing my own blog and actually started creating content online, which kind of the first place I did that was a little WordPress blog, and then old school Facebook. Like I didn't even get Instagram until way later. This was like 2013-ish. So it's pretty crazy. That's basically 13 years ago. And I mean, it's kind of a fun little story. Like I was living here in Austin, Texas, graduate of UT, Hookham. I graduated in 2012 and I stayed a year to keep working because I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to enter a PhD program for psychology. And then through a lot of red pill moments and awakenings and kind of like, holy shit, what am I doing? What am I going to do with my life? I moved to California. I moved to Santa Cruz, California. And that's kind of when the journey began. Now, why this applies to mating and dating, just to walk y'all through my full thought process. At the time at UT, I majored in psychology, minored in philosophy. I wanted to go into a PhD program for social and evolutionary psychology. So I was actually working in a lab here at UT that was all about social and personality psychology. And my favorite classes this was like junior, senior year of university, was all evolutionary psychology. I was fucking obsessed with it. A lot of this stuff comes out of basically the ethologists and the psychologists who started to realize that the mating dynamics and sexual selection that they're studying in primates and animals, we inherited a lot of this shit. And humans do the same stuff. Obviously, we're not just animals. So there's not a one-to-one correlation, but a lot of the same shit that governs dominance hierarchies and the alpha beta dynamics and the who gets to mate with who gets to procreate in a chimpanzee or bonobo troop or a gorilla community. You can see the same shit play out in a singles bar or a club or at a venue or at ecstatic dance or at a retreat or, at a cafe, at the gym. Now, this is funny because I can remember a few times I was hanging out with like these graduate students. They were already in PhD programs. The woman I was dating at the time was in a PhD program. And I would go out to 6th Street here in Austin. We'd go out drinking, go to the clubs, go to the bars. And all the shit I was studying was playing out in front of my face at these bars. Dudes trying to hit on women, pick them up, women signaling and dressing up all nice and, dropping the proverbial handkerchief to get taken home that night or start a relationship or blah, 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 blah. And this really intrigued me because if I'm being honest and vulnerable, I had no fucking idea what I was doing with dating and relationships. Nobody taught me. I got brainwashed by Catholicism that sex before marriage sends you straight to hell, an eternal realm of torment where you're punished for eternity for doing the most biological and natural thing. So I was a total retard, for lack of a better term, when it came to women. And then my high school sweetheart cheated on me while I was in college, and this fucking rock bottomed me. It was a red pill like no other. Because what any of you will know if you've experienced betrayal, whether it was romantic or otherwise, I know I've met a lot of people now and clients who've been betrayed in business as well. You know, Buddha had a great quote that basically, I thank those who have deceived me for they've taught me how to see. And I was having that moment and I was getting rocked, depression, anxiety, fucking self-loathing. How could I have done this? How could I not have known? I fucked up so bad. You know, I went into a spiral. And this is when this happened, you know, and then I was taking these classes, going out, coming out of that darkness, and kind of found my stride, found a little bit of swagger. You know, I remember many times a little buzzed up on some alcohol / you know, chatting people up, being in this academic scene. Although I had like friends that were in frats too. Like I had friends that were jocks. I had punk rocker, fucking indie rock musician friends, and I had a bunch of academic friends. I like to work the room and go across the aisle, if you know what I mean. And then I started to apply what I was learning and was becoming very successful with women. And actually had multiple relationships after that before I left Austin the first time. And a lot of this shit's pretty crazy. So this episode, that was a little interlude, prelude. I want to cover a lot of territory when it comes to polarity, dating, mating, relationships, and how I see them. Some data for y'all from over 10 years of coaching in this space. Probably more like 7 years where I really niched into that. And I've run multiple programs based on this. One of the most successful is called Primal Polarity, where I did a group program of men and women going through all this stuff in detail. I've also had a lot of one-on-one clients, and I've taught this at retreats. I've spoken on stages about it. I've run speed dating and tantric energetic polarity workshops and all this kind of stuff, which some of the stuff I look back on is pretty cringe based on where I am now, because old Kev in this world was very obsessed with the science of it. Then I found psychedelics, Burning Man, counterculture, new age, and I got obsessed with the polarity tantric side of it. And now I've come full circle and I'm just a traditional man, a traditional Texas man with traditional values. Come on. And my wife, who's from Eastern Europe, could tell you that I'm a straight shooter. I believe it's one man, one woman in a traditional marriage setup. Half joking, mostly serious, because so much of what's out there in this world of dating and relationships is hot garbage in the new paradigms of thinking. And a lot of it that's picking up on the old paradigms of traditional mating and dating as humans have done it for millions of years is also garbage because it's black and white. It's extreme thinking. And there's infinite nuance here, as there is with most things that are interesting, right? So let's just start with the basics. Let's zoom way out. What have humans been doing since the beginning of time? Fucking. We've been mating. It's how you make new things. Sexual reproduction, okay? Unless you're a fucking single cell organism or a fungi, some things can asexually reproduce through budding or sporing. And they basically don't have a mate. They can just self-clone themselves, basically. Mushrooms do this, a lot of single cell organisms. Everything else is sexually reproducing, which means a male and female of a species come together and create a new one. Now, the danger and risk of that is parasitic load, disease, becoming vulnerable in trying to acquire a mate and having another member of the opposite sex try to kill you or steal that mate. There's a lot of danger in it, which is why evolution and its wisdom, which, you know, this is another side note, but I see evolution as like an instrument or violin being played by the creator and God. So I'm not an evolutionist or agnostic atheist, although I flirted with that back in the day when I was in college. I've never been atheist, but I started to flirt with like, what if all this God stuff I learned in Christianity and Catholic Church was bullshit? Like, what if it is just evolution? What if there's no bearded man now taking the chimpanzees and Betty and Dan and being like, now Kith, and these are the, I flirted with it. Then I quickly realized it just has no empirical basis. Like materialism for me, atheism, agnosticism, there's no empirical basis for it because we don't understand anything about consciousness and biology at the deepest layers. There's a fucking mystery, and anyone who's like convinced that there's no creator or intelligent design and mystery of the religious and spiritual experiences that fill the history books in all cultures, all times and places. The burden of proof is on you as a materialist to explain why that is. So I think it's an absurd position, and it's untenable. I am a man of faith. I believe there's a creator, God, goddess, whatever you want to call it. I don't pretend to know much about what it is exactly, but I've experienced it personally. And I think evolution, back to mating, is a perfect example of the grand design and the beauty, the elegance of how this shit works. So anyway, there's a lot of risk with sexual reproduction. There's a lot of moving parts. And evolution and biology has come up with many, many strategies. So now we just fast forward. I was obsessed with a lot of primatology and anthropology and ethology that studied primates, because that's where a lot of these studies come from. I don't know if you guys know this, but 98% of our genetic code is identical to a chimp, which is kind of fucking crazy. Something like 60 or 70% of our genetic code is identical to a banana. I don't know if y'all know that. The genetic code is a weird fucking thing. We literally are all related on this planet. I was obsessed with evolutionary biology and then evolutionary psychology for a long time. And now looking back, it's like we can learn a lot about mating and dating from the animal kingdom. Now, when you look at these scientific studies and these longitudinal studies of chimp troops or bonobos, or they study birds as well. There's some interesting stuff in the animal record where basically only some bird species and some other, I think primates, I'm gonna have to fact check this. They're the only ones that practice monogamy. There's some evidence that maybe wolves do, canines. It's something like 3%. So most species of animals are polyamorous, polygamous, whatever you want to call it. They have multiple sexual partners. They don't pair bond. They mate, and then they mate again, maybe with multiple partners. And it's all about the young survival rate. And there's this statistical game being played in biology. Now, as humans, we're very different, right? Because we have psycho-spiritual, emotional realities. And pair bonding or monogamy is extremely important to understand because it ensures the survival of not only your young and your genetics being passed on, but it ensures the survival of society and culture at scale and civilization. So I do think monogamy is the highest form of mating. I think it's the most powerful. In the past, I was never like full blown, but I dabbled in polyamory, whatever the fuck you want to call it, trying to have multiple partners, being more laissez-faire. I think everyone's polyamorous. This is kind of the funniest thing. Like when you're dating multiple people, maybe you're not having sex with all of them, but like you're talking to multiple people or you're kind of in a revolving door of partnerships, you're polyamorous. It's a natural season or phase in human mating, and it's pervasive, right? Look at all the history books, even in the Bible. Solomon had 100 wives or concubines, maybe 1,000. All of the ancient records, and even up until today, this is still happening, although because of divorce courts and legality and kind of the institution of marriage, it's more off to the side. It's not just like a king can just have like 100 childbearing age women that are fertile and basically in his harem. Power and status accrue in dominance hierarchies. Jordan Peterson famously talks a lot about this. One of the GOATs. I very much think Peterson's one of the best thinkers on this, because he studied all these same things, evolutionary psychology and biology, and he has a really interesting take on a lot of it. There's a natural system and game to mating, right? So the initial thing I found was, again, I'm going to try to walk you through my thought process, then I'm going to have a bunch of hot takes, and I'm going to talk a lot of shit. And I will say, for this entire podcast and this episode, none of this is marital or relationship advice. None of this is financial advice. None of this is meant to be a substitute for mental health services. This is simply for educational and entertainment purposes only. Clip that. So I'm relieved of all liability. Gotcha. No, we're just having a conversation, and I'm just going to be raw with my thinking. I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to being told, I'm a fascist bigot and pig, and I'm a misogynist, and all the bullshit terms that get flung around when people start to talk turkey and talk real about one of the most intimate things we all experience as humans, which is sex, love, relationships, dating, mating. We all experience it, and we all came from it. And we need to face some of the tough realities / do better and evolve and upgrade the way we do it, which is what I always say in my courses and my coaching and a lot of my content over the years. It's funny that, we put a man on the moon. We have super intelligent AIs being created. We have fucking high-speed rails and all this amazing industry and technology, and look at the planet and how far we've come. And yet the thing we've been doing the longest, we can't quite figure it out. Divorce rates are what? Like, they're way over 50% now, right? They're like 55 or 60% in the US. We still have this terrible problem of sexual abuse and sexual trauma that's pervasive. We still have domestic violence. We still have all this really fucked up stuff. Emotional pain, abandonment, loss, people basically getting stuck in their wounds from she hurt me, he hurt me. I loved them. Why did they betray me? Why did this happen? We haven't figured it out. It's crazy to think about that. We've been doing it so long, and no one seems to have figured out or cracked the code. Probably because it's so infinitely complex and nuanced. Because emotions, the language of the soul, and our psychology and thoughts, they don't talk very well. It's an amazing quote. I don't know who said it, but it's basically the longest journey you'll ever take in your life is like the 16 inches from your brain to your heart, from the mind to the heart. And this is matters of the heart, right? Because we're talking about love. No one's figured it out. And I kind of set myself out on this quest a long time ago, which then led me into coaching and personal development and writing a book. I co-authored a book with two dear brothers, Mr. Last and Mr. Dick, Sex, Masculinity, and God, the Trialogues. We wrote a trialogic, it's like a dialogue, but with three men, book all about this. You can find it on Amazon. It'll be here in the show notes. Because it was a kind of a life quest for me. A lot of people talk about basically your mess is your message, or like your biggest problem or pain point becomes your mastery. I don't claim to be a master expert on any of this. I'm just a really geeked out student, which you'll notice is a theme on this podcast. I have many interests and I go all in on them. And this is one of the big ones because it was personal to me. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing with women. I didn't have healthy relationships for a while. I was fucking a doormat, a people pleaser, fawning, fucking Mr. Nice Guy, white knight, all this, bullshit. And I got obsessed with it because it was personal to me and actually an emotional, deep thing that I was suffering with. So I better figure this out. And then I figured it out to a certain level and started having a lot of success and incredible relationships. And then I started teaching it because that's, what you do when you're an entrepreneur. You solve problems. And I'm happy to say, as a little tooting my own horn, many, not a few, a handful, probably less than 10, but more than 5. I don't know how many exactly. This might be something I should do, actually. Clients I've worked with are now happily married. As an indirect, it's not like direct, like it was like they were getting proposed to during our coaching package, although I think that did happen once. But I've got a little bit of a track record with this because I like to approach this through first principles, which is why I'm walking you all the way back to my university years and when I got interested in this. So anyway, biology is where I started. Now let's talk about what's in biology about mating. And again, I'll say this once because it always comes up. If you are gay, binary, trans, LGBTQ plus, QX 3, 4, 5, whatever, all of this stuff, I would argue, still applies. Because even if it's a man and a man or a woman and a woman, polarity and the energetics of this dance I'm going to be talking about in this episode still apply. I've worked with transgender men. I've worked with transgender women. I've worked with lesbians and I've worked with gay men as clients. And turns out all this stuff still applied, and they also had successful relationships that are non-traditional. So before someone jumps in the comments, this is so heteronormative, this is only for cis white people, and it's so straight, and meh, like it literally always happens. And I get why people would say that, but what they don't understand and didn't take the leap or think about it hard enough themselves is, yeah, it still applies to your relationship too. Why wouldn't it? Anyway, say that once, couch all of this in your own personal experience, take what resonates, leave the rest, and apply it into your dynamic, right? It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. What does biology teach us? Well, there's dominance hierarchies. So in a sea lion den, I don't know what multiple sea lions are called, walruses, fucking chimps, macaques, gorillas, all the social animals, which a lot of are mammals, but this also applies in other domains as well. There's a dominance hierarchy. How does it work? The alpha male, so the male that is the most experienced, strongest body, best hunter, best killer, most dominant with his sound and his presence, gets the most females. And it's a little pyramid scheme, it's like he gets to mate and gets priority selection of the fertile females during their mating season, and his genes will propagate the most. And then it trickles down where basically the other males either jump in his pack and support him and then get, dibs on the next tier of females, or they come for the throne and they gang up and they kill his ass and install a new alpha. And then there's other guys that are like the scavengers or the betas, whatever. It's funny how people get triggered about when you use like alpha, beta, and then the new kids are talking about the sigma. The sigma's beyond the alpha. He's a loner. And it's like, yeah, nature doesn't work out so great. You usually starve when you do that and don't mate. But anyway, there's scavenger beta males that'll basically sneak in and try to mate with females and get their genes done. And they kind of like get outside the hierarchy. And if the alpha or his gang catches them, he might get his ass beat or even killed. Also, there's a lot of brutality in nature. That's the thing. It's like everything's sacred. Like I literally believe all of life is sacred, even like rocks and trees. And therefore it's perfect as it is. I actually believe that. I don't think it's like, no, the lion's evil for killing the gazelle. It's like, what are you talking about? Nature is eating itself in this death-life cycle, and mating works like this too. And there's nothing wrong with it. Humans have morality, ethics, and consciousness at a level that the animals don't. But we do the same things. A lot of it's just social or reputational or monetary or economic. Although some people, they catch their wife cheating on them and they fucking kill somebody. So we still got a lot of this biological wetware that these creatures have. Now, there's brutality. So lions, for example, if a male lion mates with a female lion and finds out her cubs don't smell like him or may not be from him because she fucked multiple male lions and, it's hard to tell paternity certainty, he'll kill the entire litter. He'll kill those children, those baby cubs. It's fucking brutal. That's how brutal the animals are to ensure that their genes get passed on, not the other guys. And there's many, many, many layers of this in nature, right? There's all these crazy mimicry and parasitic, predatory tactics that all these species have laid out. And I know you know what I'm talking about, because if you're like me, you fucking love Animal Planet or Discovery Channel or these Netflix shows, Planet Earth. They're fucking amazing. And they always cover like their mating cycle and season and the drama that unfolds, right? It's like a telenovela, except for some people get killed. And it's kind of brutal. Now, all that sexual competition and sexual selection, which are the evolutionary terms, is happening. And because it has been happening for so long, genetically, the species should be evolving and advancing. Because again, in the dominance hierarchy, the strongest male is mating with the strongest females. And so this just continues and continues and continues. Now, what's really interesting as it applies to humans is we do the same thing. It just looks very different, right? So there's a basic level in that evolutionary psychology tells us, an evolutionary mating theory when applied to humanity, which again, go check out the research. I'm synthesizing and paraphrasing. I might get some stuff wrong. There's tons of studies on this. It's a whole, sector of work now. Off the top of my head, Dr. David Buss, who I took his classes at UT, he's now been on Rogan and is kind of blown up. Dr. Joffrey Miller, what's his name? Not Eric Weinstein, his brother. Brett, thank you, sir. Brett Weinstein, his wife, go deep into this. There's a lot of heavy hitters now that are now getting press and podcast circuit. And, it's a bit of an alternative fringe thing because normal, mom and pop 1950s fucking thinking people that control a lot of the media, they're not ready to hear a lot of this stuff because it does get a little crazy and scary. And it's a bit of a mind fuck to understand how much our biology, our wetware, our biological software is still running these animal programs, even unconsciously. It's very uncomfortable. I would argue, though, it's very liberating once you understand it. And this is what this is a key takeaway of this whole episode. Just because you have the biology and these instincts and the lust and the jealousy and this really primal stuff that exists in these dominance hierarchies that are very real, by the way, that doesn't mean you have to follow them. You can choose. Tim Shell. You can choose. You can choose to act on it or not. And the cool thing about psychology and emotion is when you put your attention on attention and you put awareness on awareness and notice it, you unlock a new level of awareness and consciousness, and you can make more informed choices, healthier choices that can create the most loving, intimate, beautiful relationships that you actually want, right? So dominance hierarchies are a thing, okay? And then from that, I started to study pickup artistry and the red pill community, or MGTOW, men going their own way is the acronym. And there's a whole community online, a lot of them in subreddits, these forums. The old school, this was back in the day, which some of you Zoomers won't remember. It was on the bodybuilding.com forums, where a lot of these guys are talking about how to pick up chicks, how to play the game, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of it is just fucking garbage and toxic in the technical sense, not the I'm woke and liberal and you're toxic masculine. I mean toxic in the literal sense that it's poisonous, zero-sum psychopathic behavior. And God, it fucking works. That's the saddest part, is that women fall prey to it and feed into it. Men play it out and get numbed out and get the sexual encounter, get the relationship, but then they don't understand how to keep it or understand how to integrate what they're feeling emotionally. So I was studying it, knowing going in that it was fucked up and I was not going to manipulate women into sleeping with me. But I still looked at it because it was so fascinating to see how these men were setting this up and then immediately applying what I was learning in school with all this evolutionary mating stuff and the animal kingdom dominance hierarchies I've been explaining, how much it's all the same stuff and it plays out. So if you're not familiar with this stuff, it's pretty gnarly, but let me just lay it out for you in a very too long didn't read version. A lot of it bases on hypergamy. So this is the idea that men compete for rank in the hierarchy. What is men's rank based on? Well, in the ancient times, it's based on physical ability to hunt or defend your tribe in war, right? So a lot of it's physical prowess, which is still true, but now it's not about that only. It's about status and resources. So this is why a fat fucking millionaire, billionaire dude can sleep with a 21-year-old supermodel. This is hypergamy in a nutshell. Men compete for status and ranking on the dominance hierarchy. They compete through their career. They compete with their network. And there's multiple paths to status, right? There's people that are super, super rich and nobody knows who they are. And they don't have any clout. There's people that aren't that rich but have extreme clout and social status because of their celebrity, their artistry, their mastery of networking and shaking hands. It's not about the deals you make. It's about the hands you shake. Status. This is the predictor, and there is correlatory evidence, and I would argue hard evidence, that they are the most attractive mates for a female of breeding age because you have a statistically higher chance to have your offspring provided for and therefore repeat the process to spread your genes. That's how this works. Now, hypergamy is the kind of black-pilled view of this, which is that nobody gives a fuck what happens to you as a man. right? And this is where this gets into men's work and something else I've been involved in for many years. Men's health, men's psychology, brotherhood, the male experience of life. And there's some truth to this, and it's sad. Again, I'm just painting this picture of like, this stuff's all out there. You can go find it for yourself. My work as a coach and mentor in this domain of relationships is all about understanding this stuff so you can not repeat its mistakes and actually do it with your heart and do it in an integrated way that's wholesome and holistic and actually life-giving and serving of like good values that we want to see and raise our young daughters and sons in. That's my stance and what I teach. But you got to look into all this shit. You got to look into the abyss. You got to look into how a lot of the population views this stuff. Hypergamy is very dark view because it's basically no one gives a fuck as a man if you're depressed and broke. Women aren't going to mate with you. Other men may not lift you up. They won't support you. You're not going to be invited into their gang or tribe. It's basically just, hey, figure it out. There's a really sad, dark meme about men's mental health where it's like a guy drowning and he's like, I'm struggling. I need help. And like, you know, I really need something. And he's like falling into the ocean and lifting his hand up. And it's like society and mainstream culture just high fives him. Suck it up, bud. Figure it out. Fuck you. You know, it's like, that's kind of a lot of men's experience, which is very sad. Peterson goes on a huge rant about this and a lot of other people, Jocko Willink, a lot of other men's advocates that, you know, people say men rule the world, men are evil, fuck the patriarchy, they're so toxic, they're hurting everyone. Men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide. Prisons are filled with men by far. The most violence, violent death, pain goes to men, overwhelmingly statistically. Men are more likely to be a victim of violence. Men are more likely to have mental health defects and fall into addiction. The stats are really sad how much our society has disabused men of their power and health and healing. Totally fucked up, which is why I'm an advocate for men's work. I do men's work. I have a community, which you can find in the show notes, called The Fellowship, which is a community of brothers on this path. And, you know, we meet weekly. We have men's circles. We talk about the hard shit. We talk about our pain. We also lift each other up and fucking, you know, play a little grab ass and slap ass and high five and have fun together as guys to make more money, have better relationships, and change the world. So if you're not part of a men's group, gentlemen, join one. Women, you should also be part of a women's group. It's extremely important that men and women circle up and get integrated culturally and societally and tribally, and then come together and love and create families. So that's kind of like me skipping ahead to the end here, but it's true. And I'm just kind of stream of consciousness right now. So just follow me and have your note-taking app ready because there will be a quiz after. Hypergamy is fucked up. No one cares about what happens to your outcomes as a man. Lift yourself up by your bootstraps, get a fucking job, figure it out, go to the gym, make 6 figures, have a 6-pack, be 6 foot tall. There's all this pressure on men, and the men who dominate our system, which again, a lot of this is determined by economics and money. A lot of it's determined by status and what's cool and what's hip. The men that rise to the top of the dominance hierarchy have the pick of all the women. So the way women work in hypergamy is they wait. There's a great meme and like visual of this where it's like you're running a race. The choice women, which again, what are women ranked on in this model? Well, it's beauty, it's fertility. So if you are of fertile age, which the reason men love, you know, big tits, big ass, there's like a ratio they've studied with like Playboy, you know, centerfolds. I believe it's 0.7 hip to waist ratio, supple breasts, big hips. There's some facial stuff too. There's all these markers that they've actually studied and looked at. Again, a lot of it goes to biology. It's all fertility indicators. So women, their value in this hierarchy, again, I'm not saying any of this is right or correct, that we look at things this way. I'm laying out for you what's driving a whole subsector and subculture of what your kids or your friends are looking at and dating and being influenced. You know, go look up Andrew Tate. He's kind of the poster boy of some of this stuff. Rollo Tomasi is a big thinker who wrote The Rational Male, which is fascinating stuff. I think a lot of it's black-pilled though. It's pretty doomer. Wouldn't recommend taking it in wholeheartedly. There are a few nuggets in here though that you should be aware of and probably take into your dating life just as an awareness of how this wetware and this fucking horny chimp, this ape that's in your subconscious is looking at the world, and women and men. It goes both ways. So in this model, the men are running a race of status and resources, and the women are waiting at the finish line to snatch up and mate with the winners. And this is very sad because in hypergamy, the men compete to get the pick of the litter of women, to the point where, and again, these are all in studies. I'm just going off memory here. I'm going to get a lot of this wrong. Fact check me, Jamie. Pro athletes, rock stars, CEOs on Wall Street, the top dogs in all domains you can imagine. They have a sexual access that's like 8-1 or something crazy versus your average Joe who's competing for fertile partners, wives, girlfriends, etc. They have an absolute crazy advantage in this hypergamous pyramid of the dominance hierarchy of mating. And it's biologically driven. Because what are men selecting for? Fertility, beauty. There's a lot of other things you should be selecting for, obviously. Values, personality, emotional intelligence, self-accountability. Again, at the end of this, I'll go into my own personal model of how I think about this and what I apply to my own life. And I'm very happily married and I love my wife. And I'm so grateful for the pain and the journey I went through and she went through so we could find each other. But fuck, man, fertility is what men are looking at. And that's why the beauty industry is multi-billion dollar. I mean, actually, it's probably over $1 trillion. I don't even know. That's why Ozempic is so hot right now. I don't have to work out or eat clean. I can just lose weight. All this stuff's based on fertility for the females. And the women, what are they looking at? Well, yeah, he's hot. Obviously, being attractive as a male is important. Not as important as resources and status in the hypergamous model. And there's a lot of horror stories in hypergamy, right? A lot of these red pill community men use this as the boogeyman to justify treating women like objects. A lot of women use it, I think, subconsciously. And we're going to get into some of the men versus women stuff later. Women use it to justify, oh, I'm going to dump this guy. He's a broke loser. And I'm going to cheat or I'm going to mate switch to a more high status man. This is what's driving a lot of infidelity. This is what's driving a lot of divorce. This is what's driving dating app culture, which, holy shit. I mean, that is a whole episode in and of itself. What dating apps and pornography and digital dominance hierarchies have done to mating pre-internet. And men and women are just playing this out like a fucking carnival, like a roulette. And it's pretty hard to break out of because on some level, unless you're very advanced emotionally and psychologically and you've studied and done shadow work and integrated some of these parts of yourself and have taken accountability and responsibility for your part in your past, failed marriage or past relationships or whatever, how you've hurt others and how you've been hurt. It's hard to break out of this because it's based in reality and facts biologically. Again, what do men want? They want to pass on their genetics and they want to know that they're the father. So now we get into the big elephant in the room, which is paternity certainty. So many thinkers, Rian Eisler, Terence McKenna, I forget his name, the author of Sex at Dawn. There's a bunch of body of work studying hunter-gatherers and pre-industrial, well, not even industrial, pre-agriculture humans, when we actually started to stay in one place and build cities and stockpile food, and we weren't nomadic hunter-gatherers or pastoralists, that they were practicing a more polyamorous style. We're basically, taking mushrooms ritualistically under full moons and new moons, having festivals and rituals. Everybody's fucking everybody. There's an orgiastic mating style. And there's evidence for this in a lot of prehistory. It's hard to tell, though, because the historical record gets pretty shoddy the further you go back. So some of this is speculation, but there's a lot of evidence for it. And again, go check out the research on this. Nothing I'm saying in this podcast, well, everything is my opinion because it's me, and that doesn't make it invalid. But a lot of this stuff is really interesting that you can go research and actually find the books, find the research papers, find the archaeology on this stuff. So back then, you didn't know who the kid was. Obviously, women, because the child's coming out of their body and they're giving birth, this beautiful miracle, where they're kind of 3D printing a human in their uterus. It's fucking crazy when you think about it. They know that kid's theirs. It's coming out of their body. But the men don't know. Paternity certainty creates a lot of anxiety, creates a lot of violence, creates the dominance hierarchies, creates some, wait a minute, did she sleep with John? When I was out hunting, I guess it's more like Unga and Bunga. When Unga went to hunt mammoth, did Sheila sleep with Bunga? At last ritual, when everyone's sleeping with everybody, my kid doesn't look like Unga, it looked like Bunga, And for a long time, humans theoretically didn't even know how sex worked. They didn't understand that like the sperm and the egg have this process, and they didn't know what the fuck it was. They didn't know what a fertile window was, or ovulation, or the luteal phase. They didn't understand any of this shit. They did see that women bled, and they thought they were goddesses because nothing bleeds and doesn't die. There's a whole history of like the goddess worship. The feminine was sacred. There's a whole prehistory, which I'll have to do a whole episode on this eventually, of before the religion and the values we know today, many of which come from Greece and Rome and then Christianity and the story of the West. There's a whole nother world of how sexuality and the genders were viewed. But anyway, paternity certainty wasn't a thing until they started to pay attention and realize, and then, at some point, presumably marriage was invented, or pair bonding. And then, they started to understand physiological succession. They're trying to understand, wait, he looks like him, she looks like her. When I sleep with that woman and we're not doing this style of the tribal sharing of wives and partners, blah, 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 I know that kid's mine. And this has caused massive anxiety from men throughout time because, and this is where the economics come in, who do we pass the resources to? Who do I pass my sword down to? My horses, my goats, the farm, my bank account, my business. Paternity certainty has a lot to do with succession and who's your heir. And then in the aristocracy, feudalism, kings, queens, royalty, all these systems that depend on hereditary, this is very important to actually figure out. And a lot of our sexual systems and dominance hierarchies come out of that anxiety and want to pass resources through time from your genetics and the fruit of your loins, not the guy down the street. This alone in this episode, if you just go into this idea and think about how it's played out in your own life and your relationships, your failed marriage, your current marriage, your high school sweetheart, your college, your baddie years, your fuckboy years, your hoe years. Think about how much this played out subconsciously. It's easy to see looking back, harder to realize now in the moment. How much of mating is about status, it's about resources, it's about economics, and it's about the tribal village stuff of interpersonal relating. Because we want loyalty, we want intimacy, we want love, we want to feel worthy of love. We want to receive love, and then we want to give love and feel that it's being received in return. We want reciprocity, we want sympathy, we want empathy. These are the most human, deep, like spiritual, really down in the gut and the bones and the balls and the ovaries. These are core desires and needs of the human experience. And that's why the mating stuff is so painful when it goes wrong. It's brutal. It hurts. That's probably why it's worth becoming a pro at it and training and studying the art and science of dating, mating, relationships, and love, which is what I've dedicated, the better part of these 13 years since I really took this seriously into looking at. And, I've put in my personal kind of 10,000 hours teaching, coaching, and most of that was on myself, practicing it and trying to unlock this stuff. And I've got a long way to go because I'm not a fucking expert at all. Just got married last year. So, a lot of the married people, I see this in comments a lot. It's like, yeah, all this polarity is great, Kevin, and these philosophic ideas. Try having 3 kids and being married for 40 years. You don't know shit. And hey, maybe they're right. But at least I know I don't know shit. I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm sharing my findings. And sadly, the boomers or the people writing that in my comment sections have been divorced 3 times. Never built a date night. They don't know what love languages are. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So I'm not taking advice from that. Which is a little quick commercial break. Trolls on the internet. Haters. He's a fucking hater. You're a troll. Fuck these people, okay? I love them because they're engagement farming for you on the algorithms. They're actually your super fans in drag. They're literally super fans in drag. But, and similar to the man in the arena, this famous poem, are you going to take advice from someone talking shit? No. It's like, what are we talking about? What they are, it's hard not to take it personally. You know, Rogan famously says he doesn't read his comment sections. He's running the top podcast in the world. Dude's mega viral. He's got massive influence and following. He doesn't look at comments because there's so much just vile garbage there. And a lot of people, myself included, if you go in and read them or try to respond to them or defend yourself, you get sucked into their game. Where do trolls live? They live under the bridge. They live in the sewer. What happens when you feed the troll? They stick around and they get stronger. So they're actually a KPI. They're a key performance indicator. That means you're over the target. So when trolls start coming for you, it means you're touching on something real. It's a KPI. And they boost your algorithm. So fuck them. Just don't feed them. And you actually love to see them. Sometimes you hate to see them when they really go psychotic. And that's why I would liberally promote the use of the unfollow, unlike, unfriend, and block buttons. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming. That kind of lays out hypergamy for you, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of red pill stuff. There's all this, what's the guy that wrote The Game? Another great author and book that's in this, Neil Strauss. A lot of this like stuff is like, it works because the most base emotional needs in a lot of this stuff are completely fucked up. And it works because of this biological stuff I'm laying out. Like negging women, cutting down their worthiness, fucking ghosting them, withdrawing your attention, on the male side. It makes them more attracted and interested because like they're going to want to go with a bad boy because he has more of the alpha and the genetics versus the beta guy who's a people pleaser and really nice. And a lot of this stuff has to deal with women's cycles. So when women are ovulating, they much prefer the bad boy alpha guy that mistreats them or abuses them. How many women out there listening can relate? Because his genetics, although he's kind of a fucking retard when it comes to actually relating and holding down a relationship, he does have more priority genetics because of the reasons I was sharing before. He might have more status and resources, and his low agreeableness sends a signal to that woman's brain when she's in heat. And then when women are on birth control, which tricks their body and completely fucks it up hormonally, or when they're in another part of their cycle and they're not fertile, they'll prefer the good dad instead of the bad boy. And they'll tend to want to date more betas or even marry one because they're going to be a good provider emotionally and time-wise, maybe also resource-wise for the children. There's a whole rabbit hole here, and I'm not going to be able to go through everything because I'm just riffing, but you're starting to see the picture I'm painting, I hope. Women will make rules for betas and break rules for alphas. I didn't coin that term. That's one of these famous terms in these communities. And a lot of this stuff has forced otherwise empathic, good men who respect women and love them and have a good relationship with their mother to become these fucking cold alpha wannabe fuckboys, numbed out, negging women, ghosting them, juggling women. They call it spinning plates, where they have like a bunch of different women on deck, texting them, breadcrumbing them, gaslighting, all these buzzwords that you love seeing cancel culture throw around. A lot of this stuff's real, and there's a reason people are pissed and having outrage about it because it's dark. But it's operating from all the stuff I've been sharing. There's a real basis for it. And here we get to one of the maybe contentious hot takes. Women are just as responsible as men for these behaviors. No, Kevin, it's all men. It's all you. You did this to me. I am a victim of it. Yes, victimhood is real. Yes, on average, physical sexual violence is pervaded by men, against men and women. I'm not debating that. And my heart breaks when I read these statistics. When you work with someone that's been abused, like it's really sad and fucked up, and we can do better. And just by simple mathematics and probability and this paradigm I'm laying out for you, it's 50-50 across time and across energy. Because women, every time they sleep with one of these men, every time they entertain a date, every time they reciprocate, they provide sexuality, they provide emotional labor, they provide all this stuff, psychological cues and reciprocity. They're feeding into it. And where, again, people don't want to hear this. Where's the accountability and ownership? I see both sides, and I play both sides. And again, I have a privileged position because I've been coaching and teaching this stuff a lot, and I get to see into people's lives, and I get a front row seat to these dynamics. And I spent a lot of time dating amazing women and experiencing a lot of these relationships in my life too, of many stripes and colors of what I'm describing. There is a phenomenon where our classic triad or triangle of victim, perpetrator, savior gets played out pretty hardcore. And women in our culture is very feminized. What's funny is, like, I don't see our culture as a dark patriarchy with these evil tyrants oppressing everyone. On the big economic military level, yes, there's a lot of truth to that, because most of the world is run by old fucking white dudes who are psychopaths. Like, it's just kind of like, call it like you see it, right? But the social culture that's being generated through the digital, omnipresent social media fuckfest, absolute cluster. All of the woke leftist stuff that's come in, plus just like internet, celebrity, mainstream news culture, is actually a dark feminine culture. It's feminized. It's about victimhood. It's about punishment. It's about celebrating being a victim. It's about canceling and witch hunting perpetrators, even if a lot of them, turns out, didn't actually do what they're trying to say they did. We don't live in a clear-cut patriarchy. The matriarchy is alive and well and is as much to blame for a lot of the dark shit as the patriarchy that people love to rail about. It's fucking both and. And when you look through the party lines and what the news wants to tell you, you can see evidence for this. It's always been men and women ruling together. All these guys you hate that are causing the pain have wives. You think they're just sitting on the sidelines completely innocent? All the people you love that are doing the best things in the world to uplift humanity and create impact, there's a male and a female running the game. It's always been this way. Partnership and symbiosis between men and women. We wouldn't have survived otherwise. So, and this is where we get into a little bit of my tirade here. A lot of the bad behavior in the new age, polyamory, Burning Man, ketamine, new styles of relating, tantra, yantra, mantra, bantra, all this fucking stuff, which, a lot of you were like, that's you, Kevin. How dare you make fun of them? That's you. I've seen your videos. Yeah, it is me, which is why I'm the expert on it. I've done a lot of it and I understand it because I've been in the scene for a hot minute. It's changing rapidly, though. A lot of these people are now Bible-thumping Christians, being modest, covering their shoulders and ankles. There's a big born again thing happening in these scenes. There's also a big disillusionment with like the old David Data style polarity, which we haven't even really talked about yet. But here's the thing. A lot of those women have zero accountability or ownership of their part to play in the bad behavior. We know all the guys' bad behavior and it gets railed, the whole toxic masculine thing, this whole fucking, witch hunt and just like feeding frenzy of piranhas online on these people. And again, of course, bad behavior should be exposed and people should face justice. If they broke the law, crossed boundaries, hurt and abused people, caused pain, yeah, like let's fucking bring them to justice. But let's stop pretending that it's all men. What the fuck are you talking about? Getting a little sidetracked here, but this is important to understand. And this kind of jumps into the next layer of all this. So we've talked about red pill, hypergamy, all that stuff. Men going their own way, whatever you want to call it, this community of men who are sick of being cheated on by women, mistreated, getting mate switched by women because they're trying to climb the hierarchy. And a lot of these men, the men going their own way, it's like, dude, just fuck it. Stop dating women. You need to go to the gym. You need to get serious about business and make more money, get a better job, and you need to bond with other men. Which on paper, I agree with all that. Now, the way they're doing it, again, in this model, which is this whole underworld of the internet, is totally fucked up and without heart. And it's not integrated. But it's a step into men understanding the part they're playing in this and taking responsibility and ownership. There's a similar thing happening with women, with all of the women's work and the women's communities out there, where women are realizing, why do I keep dating the same types of men? Okay. I'm not the problem in all these relationships, but I am the pattern. So I didn't coin that. Amazing post I saw recently pointed this out. I don't know who the fuck it was. I'm sure they stole it from somewhere else. Going fucking Jay Shetty. I don't know if y'all know how much a shill Jay Shetty is. Jay Shetty's been caught many times. Which I like. Jay Shetty's similar like Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra's been in the Epstein files. He's a fucking demon. Deepak Chopra wasn't just like in the files. He was Epstein's like boy. Like they were like going on, they use all these code words for like basically underage prostitutes and God knows what else. Deepak Chopra is a fucking shill. And I looked at Jay Shetty for the first time and I always thought Deepak was a fucking joke, even before I understood the whole spirituality community. But I took one look at Jay Shetty and I was like, this guy's a clown. I mean, I'm just kind of trolling right now, but he literally took like quotes from like Abraham Lincoln and like Thomas Jefferson and put them on a meme, and it's like something profound, Jay Shetty. And people are like, oh my God, he's so deep. He's a fucking retard. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen and fucking absolute bad behavior in these scenes and spaces. Kind of hate to see it. I also love to see it for comedy material, which I love. Basically, that whole community of bad behavior dating is opposed by or complementary to, in the philosophic sense, of what like the new age, more feminizing and polarity based, tantric informed, psychology and wellness informed style of dating that we start to see after the 1960s. So people doing sex, drugs, and rock and roll, psychedelics do open you up to a different level of sensitization and empathy around all this stuff. And you're going to date differently. You're going to mate differently. And people started to really think about this stuff, right? In this cultural revolution, which I'm very fond of. I've studied the 1960s and the top players a lot because I think it's super fascinating because it's changed our whole culture in the West. Now, a lot of these people started to look at alternative ways to date and to enter into pair bonding and courtship and mating and all of it. And then we get, humanistic psychology. We get all these wellness techniques, and psychology in general and psychotherapy gets really popular. And then we have this whole movement. And then we get to like David Data, right? Way of the Superior Man, Dear Lover. These are seminal texts that I still recommend to clients. I think they're incredible. There's some caveats and nuance now, years and years and years later, but this whole idea of polarity gets big, right? This is like, it started in the 60s, but really ramps up 80s, 90s, and then 2000s. It kind of explodes and it enters all the scenes I'm sure many of you are familiar with in personal development. And it's basically stuff we already knew, but in poetic kind of, he's heavily influenced by the tantric teachings of Hinduism and yoga, and also the Taoist teachings, both of which have these tantric streams of thought, yin, yang, sun, moon, king, queen, masculine, feminine. They're energetics, day, night. There's this polarity and binary energetic, right? And men have both masculine and feminine energy, but a man in his power is dominant masculine energy. And that's electric and penetrating and yang. It's active to a woman who has both masculine and feminine energy, but is dominant feminine energy, if she's a powerful woman, which is magnetic and receiving and receptive And then they enter into this dance, and that's where all the sparks are, and the meditation and the lovemaking and the beauty and the poetry and romance lives. And this is a very powerful methodology and system. And, again, I recommend you do your own research and look into some of this stuff. That whole world blew my mind when I found it. So back to my story, I found all the evolutionary psychology and mating stuff. I moved into, pickup artist. What is all this stuff? How do I talk to women? I don't get it. I could never do it. I learned from it, but I was just like, I'm an empath. I'm a sensitive guy. I always have been. It hurts me to hurt someone else, especially in like a romantic situation. I couldn't be fake and fucking deceive and lie and treat people like shit. I couldn't do it. Now that also got me turned into a doormat many times and totally run over by women who are playing their role in that and just, wanting more alpha energy or bad boy energy. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And this is a lot of the work I do with men in coaching is, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Stop being a fucking emotional doormat. Learn to step into your power with your heart, connected to your heart. Lead, dominate, and create frame and power so that a woman feels safe to be in your domain and love you and support you. And then you can enter into a real partnership without being an asshole. That's the part a lot of these guys miss. A lot of them are just assholes. Women don't want that. They don't like that. How many women watching this have dated assholes? How many men watching this tried to become an asshole to get love? It's a whole rabbit hole there. So then I read Way the Superior Man, and I'll never forget the first time I read it. I was driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and I binged it in one day. I was reading the physical book when I was like in nature and stuff, and then I was listening to the audio on this long drive, and I took the long way, scenic route. I was dating a woman at the time, and it just like, just hit me like a fucking lightning bolt of like, oh my God. I have been completely retarded, holding back my energy. Retarded in the technical sense, which just means you've slowed or stopped your growth. I don't mean mentally disabled. I'm going to use that word a lot. And again, someone always gets triggered. I'm not talking about mentally disabled people who I love, actually. Like I had mentally disabled friends when I was a kid. Anyway, I'm probably have to do a whole episode about the trigger cancel culture stuff. And yeah, I mean, this podcast is more raw. And some of these probably won't make it to social media, some of these clips, because they'll get flagged or people will lose their shit. But for those that want the full episode and the long form content, ideally YouTube, Spotify, where you listen to the full thing. There's no censorship or freakouts there. Data has these really interesting ideas about the stages, right? The first, second, and third stage, right? So first stage relating is very basic. It's very like caveman. It's kind of, for lack of a better term, the 1950s housewife and working man. It's polarized, which means there is attraction and energy, but it's very basic. It's somewhat transactional. It's very one-dimensional. It's I get this, you get that, I'll give you this, I want that, da-da-da-da-da. It's very like basic in how it plays out. And then you have the second stage, which I think a lot of people, again, these are fluid. It's a spectrum. It's not like you graduate from stage 1 and you're in stage 2 from now on. You slip between all of them. And it's a really nuanced spectrum. And again, I'm butchering it and paraphrasing. Go check out his work / all his students and proteges who've taken this stuff and run with it. Second stage is very much like nonviolent communication. It's way more transactional. It's like, when you said that, I felt this, and I need love in this way, my love language to da-da-da-da. It's like, it's beautiful in a sense that there's more communication, but there is more conditions and more like tit for tat and trading energy. And you can get bogged down in the swamp of over communicating and then depolarize or lose attraction. And then the mythical third stage, which I've never met anyone on this stage, but you pass into it briefly when you're really locked in, is like, it's kind of this Taoist like union, the center of the yin yang, where, you completely just embody love and you speak and act from love without any expectation of getting something in return. And when both people do this, both partners, man and woman, you enter this super conductive state of just like bliss. Challenges still happen, fights still happen, but because you're not trying to get something and play a zero-sum game, you enter into like love at speed, at will. And you just embody it because you love yourself and you're so individual and sovereign. You can cohabitate, co-symbiosis with the other. It's really beautiful. A lot of this stuff is poetic. And again, it's based on these yogic and Taoist philosophies. And it's really fascinating stuff. And I still teach my version of this and how I understand it to this day. And there's a lot of power there. But then you have the conscious community who just takes this stuff and runs with it, myself included in the past, and just makes an absolute fucking mess of it. Add in some psychedelics, add in some infidelity, add in polyamory, polygamy, open relating, add in bad behavior, taking zero accountability or ownership, and you just get a swamp of emotional pain and blocking intimacy and just a lot of women getting completely abandoned, hurt, betrayed, and being left out in the cold because they went into their people pleaser program or their maiden and went out of their way to make sure everyone else is okay and then didn't get their needs met, or became succubi and used spiritual language to weaponize and manipulate using sexuality. A lot of men went into people-pleasing white knight. I can save her. I can do polarity the right way. And I'm a yes man. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you can take what you want. And then doormat, people-pleasing, betrayal, abandonment, pain, loss of intimacy, or full spiritual fuckboy, right? Many of you will, like, if you've seen my content for a long time, I've talked about this for years, but many of you listening to this will instantly be able to place yourself in how you fit into this dynamic and Lego pieces in your own relationships, either right now or in the past. And the goal of all of this, why this is so fascinating, is like, as humanity, again, to go a little into grandiosity here, we got to figure this stuff out. We get to and have to figure out how to do this stuff in a good way and relate in a good way so we can raise healthy, whole children who don't repeat our mistakes. Most of history is our parents didn't figure their shit out. I have met people, I think they're rare, and it's very beautiful when they were raised by a man and a woman who stayed in love and were deeply connected and provided healing and peace and a good role model for their kids. And those people usually have good relationship outcomes. There's studies on this. You can look at the data. Most of us, though, didn't. Even if it was a safe, healthy home, maybe there's a little emotional abandonment. Maybe there was a divorce. Maybe there was not getting your needs met as a kid or watching mom and dad relate. And maybe that's how I should do it. And then repeating the pattern. Again, you're not the problem in all your relationships, but you are the pattern. And it's on you. Ownership, accountability. I've said it many times on this show. Figure this stuff out, do the healing work, get really clear on what you want, and go forth and let's create a world where men and women are living in harmony and symbiosis and raising little boys and little girls that'll grow up to do the same and evolve this process of consciousness, because the love that is available in romance and partnership and the romantic, beautiful, infinite power of that love can heal the whole planet. I've often had this idea based on indigenous council culture and like many of the councils and the peoples that have tried many styles in prehistory / indigenous people from the whole planet, Asia, the Americas, Europe, like we've all, like all of our ancestors are indigenous, by the way, even our ancestors. Go study like ancient Europe and the migrations that happened. Like we're all indigenous. What if the future wasn't like just some dude that has the most weapons or violence coercing people to do what they want? What if it was a couple? What if the ultimate structure to govern a village or a community was a council of 13 divine union couples who, through the community voting or witnessing them in their power, in their beauty, in their ability to alchemize and emotionally be available and deep and perceptive and spiritually understand the nuances of family life and society. What if those people were running the world? What kind of world would it be? I'll leave you with that thought as I wrap up here. My intention today was I'll just do a polarity episode so I can point people at it and go into all this stuff. And I'm just realizing now, this is like 20 podcasts, right? Because there's just so much here. And ultimately, if you are single right now, I would highly recommend finding out what it means to you, given everything I've said, to experiment more with courtship and much more conscious, conscientious, and discerning dating in a slower, more built-up style versus the dopamine casino of dating apps and quick fixes and just switching to a new partner as soon as you hit a limit or pain point. That's one. Two is, if you're in a relationship right now, or you're married, or you're with someone you believe is the one, in this season of life, what is your edge or pain point? And what would happen if you actually just communicated to your partner what your needs and desires were and asking what theirs are? And just like running a company or governing a village or leading a family, in a beautiful way that gets both your needs met, what if you could re-enter courtship and renew your relationship? You really love to see it. And, this is stuff I'm doing, actively. I work with clients one-on-one. I work with couples. I love doing it. I feel like I'm really good at it. It is one of my zones of expertise. And, stay tuned for this. I'm speaking it out now, so I definitely do it. I'm going to take, using the AI agentic tools as my little robot helpers and just a knowledge database of my writing, my sessions, my thinking, my videos, my courses, the group programs, everything I've done as I've been explaining my journey on this episode over the last 13 years and thought about. I'm going to synthesize that and produce a fucking next level, like codex product course that will be available digitally. I'll probably also do a live version where I work with people online together in a cohort. And I'm just going to package it all up. And then maybe after that, retire from doing the relationship work. I'll still do it for the right client always, because I get so much joy and flow state from it. But I feel like I want to put a nice bow on this epoch or era or season and just give you the gem from all the mining I did, the polished little diamond. And I'm really excited about that. So appreciate all of you. I'm just honored if even one person listens to this or watches it and gets an aha. To me, that's worth it. That's why I'm doing this. I would do this even if no one's talked about it, because I just like to talk and communicate. And this is like my art, my science, my practice. If you like the show, you can email me or DM me. Any questions you have, any pushback, you want to fact check, you want to talk some shit, send me a message. Hit subscribe and share this one with your beloved, or share this one with someone you think could really get a lot out of it, because this is a deep one. There'll probably be a part 2 at some point. But until next time, friends, family, appreciate y'all. Go be the love you want to see in the world. Come on.